Good afternoon everyone, it's Debbie and Rolo here. Sorry, we were having a slight technical issue. Today we're going back to the first book in the series, The Secret Adventures of Rolo, Athelstan and the Time Tunnel. And today we are looking at the Blitz. Rolo appears during the Second World War, as you will discover. A brief conversation with Athelstan went something like this. As you are a rescued pup, it's fitting that you become a rescuer. You showed your mettle helping the cat in the fire. Now there is more serious work to be done. Emerging from the tunnel and waving off the tiny lamp bearers, I nearly bolted back down the hole after them. There were lots of loud bangs and fireworks lighting up the sky, only they weren't fireworks, not the brightly coloured ones the floppy-haired boy lights to celebrate Guy Fawkes Night at the beginning of November anyway. I'm not scared of fireworks, by the way, just angry about them. How dare people let them off over my garden? No, these were seriously loud bangs and I was scared. Suddenly the noise stopped and I could smell smoke. I ran about yapping as I don't like fire. There were sirens going off and that nearly sent me crazy. I don't even like it when the floppy-haired boy leaves the fridge open and it beeps. Then a man in a white tin helmet that said ARP on it caught me by the collar and said, "Are you a rescue dog? Come quickly, we need you over here." I could see that there was a commotion. Something terrible had happened. I followed where he pointed, and we found ourselves standing next to the remains of a building which had just become a mass of rubble. There was dust everywhere, and I could hear faint cries coming from the pile of bricks. It was very faint, and I doubted the humans could hear the distress sound. A woman in a raincoat and headscarf was sobbing frantically as she tried to explain to anyone that would listen to her that her son was trapped somewhere underneath that lot. A firebomb from a German plane had brought the whole lot down. Without hesitation, I scampered over the damaged bricks and disappeared from view down a hole opened up by the explosion. I followed not only the sound, but also the scent. This could be my floppy-haired boy trapped under here, I thought, and that thought drove me on with no care for my own personal safety. Wheezing slightly, I gritted my teeth and scrabbling with my front paws like a creature possessed. This was a tough job. The sound of sobbing was getting louder. I'd found the lad, but he was trapped. There were all kinds of bricks and rubble on top of him. The boy was frightened, although I did not think he was too badly hurt, just stuck. I snuggled into him and licked his face, and he responded by blinking and moving his arms a bit. This encouraged me. I struggled back out the way I had come. This is difficult for a terrier because rather than turn round, we tend to shuffle backwards and put our forelegs out to assist with the movement, although in reality this makes us wider and therefore means retreating from a hole the way we came in, as it's much more difficult. Nothing we can do about it, it's just the way we Jack Russells are made. There was no room to turn round in this bomb devastation. I started barking to show the rescuers where the boy was located and backed out, white flag tail first, sneezing into the daylight of the rubble-strewn street. The headscarf woman fell into a faint and was attended to by kindly tea-bearing neighbours, and the ARP warden bent down and patted me, and then immediately got to work with a shovel and a team of volunteers to try to gently dig the boy out of the rubble to safety without causing him any more harm. I heard that his name was Nick. His mother had recovered from her faint and, restored by the tea, she engulfed him as he was carried to the surface on a makeshift stretcher, and luckily only minor injuries. I slipped away from the scene when I heard Nick ask his mum if they could keep me. She pointed out that they didn't have a home anymore and burst into tears again. Anyway, I belonged to another floppy-haired boy, but they couldn't know that, of course. Roaming about the bombed-out streets, I met a few other rescue dogs, tirelessly assisting ARP wardens in their continual search for trapped bomb victims. All kinds of dogs were helping out: Alsatians, terriers, collies, wire-haired fox terriers. Any dog that could follow a scent would be invaluable, seeking out life where human rescuers could not. And many wartime household pets were also rescued by these loyal canines. By the time I found my way back to the time tunnel, I could barely see because I had tears in my eyes. Most unusual for me. Must be all that smoke and dust. Humph. "You all right?" asked Paddy Paws. Paddy Paws asked Yulia with concern in her voice. I assured her I was and followed her in a sombre mood through the time tunnel. I went home slightly less full of my own self-importance and a lot quieter than usual. A humbling lesson had been learned. Athelstan gave me the full facts of the Blitz the next time we met. He told me that the people of London had suffered terrible bombing night after night from the 7th of September 1940 until May 1941, as the Luftwaffe tried to literally blast the city into submission with their relentless air raids. It became part of everyday life to sleep either in a specially constructed Anderson shelter or, more latterly, by crowding onto the platforms of the London Underground system. The nighttime raids were the worst. The whole capital became sleep-deprived, but Londoners are a stoic breed and they did not give in to despair. Even King George VI and Queen Elizabeth refused to leave London, not wanting to desert their loyal subjects nor show signs of cowardice. Eventually, Hitler found another target, Russia, and the bombing of London and other cities ceased. 1.4 million people had been made homeless across Britain, but it would be another 4 years before the war ended. I slept for a few hours and then we had our usual walk, and then the lady put on the television. Most unusual for her to do that in the morning, and she sat teary-eyed watching the Remembrance Day service from Whitehall. If only she knew what I'd been up to the previous night, or was it more than 60 years ago? I wondered what had become of that bombed-out boy and his mother. Well, actually, Rolo does find out the answer to that. He meets Nick again in the second book as an elderly gentleman in Grandad Polo's care home. So he does actually meet Nick again. I'd also like to read to you a cheery little tale. This is one of Rolo's dog blogs, the things that happen in his everyday life. And this was a very exciting day out a couple of years ago when Rolo and I went to the Cotswold Wildlife Park. What an exciting and exhausting day out we've had today. The smiley lady took me to the Cotswold Wildlife Park near Burford. She was so excited because dogs are actually allowed in there, as long as we dogs are kept on short leads, that is. There are not many places that dogs are actually allowed to visit, and not only that, they didn't charge for me to go in. I barked at the lady in the ticket booth because she leaned into the car and the smiley lady told me to be quiet. I was only introducing myself in case she didn't know who I was. The smiley lady said I would be banned if I carried on like that. I sat quietly and waited to be let out from the car once we'd parked under a tree for shade in a nearby field. It was a beautiful sunny day near the end of summer term, and several school parties and playgroups were also enjoying a day trip to the park. The big old house and wonderful formal gardens planted up with marvellously colourful borders are very impressive to the visitor. Don't forget that I'm not like any other dogs, and I can actually see in black that can only see in black and white. I can actually appreciate the wonder of nature's paint box in all its technicolor glory. The first animals we saw were birds, mainly different types of owls. I put my paws up on the barrier to get a better look, and they seemed very interested in me, swivelling their heads and staring at me with their beady eyes. I wondered if they might know Bubo. The smiley lady pulled me away gently because she was afraid the owls might be eyeing me up as a possible daytime snack. I wasn't allowed into the big walk-in aviary nor the reptile house, not even to see the bats. Pity really, but I do understand there are some places it's just not safe for a little dog to go. I pulled the smiley lady towards an interesting pen and was quickly steered away again, but not before I had the chance to read the label. some sort of wild cat. Alas, we were not destined to meet. Wandering across the park, we found an enclosure with giant tortoises in it. I've never seen such big, slow plodders. I'd like to have gone in and had a ride on one of their backs, but again, the smiley lady pulled me away. Ooh, then I spied a fish pond full of brightly coloured water lilies, just right for a cooling drink on a hot summer's day. I nearly tipped in head first, but luckily the smiley lady had a firm hold of my lead. Another big grassy enclosure held a group of camels with 2 humps. Makes me wonder what the collective noun for a group of camels is. A hump? The camels didn't take much notice of me, neither did the zebras. I knew that a bunch of zebra is called a dazzle. I also wondered how the camels felt about being in a field, thinking sand would be their natural habitat. Rolo's just returning for the rest of the story. He's a little monkey. Right in the middle of the park, we saw a family of white rhino in a huge enclosure surrounded by a wire fence and a moat to keep them all safe. They are huge and all have a pointy horn on their heads. I don't really understand why they're called white rhino, because they're actually a kind of greeny grey, but the smiley lady didn't say the answer to that one out loud, so she probably doesn't know either. There was a really cute baby rhino called Ian, who was only 3 months old. Rhino have wrinkly, saggy bottoms. So does the smiley lady, but you didn't hear that from me. We came upon an anteater. What a funny looking animal with a very long nose. It looked like it might tip over with the weight of it. Then we saw a peacock with its tail feathers up, putting on a marvellous display. The peahens weren't very impressed, but I was. I wondered if the show was especially for me, being a famous dog. A little train whistled past, full of waving children. I looked up at the smiley lady. I knew we both really wanted to ride on that narrow gauge train, so we set off at once to find the station. The smiley lady paid the fare. Again, I travelled free. And we sat in one of the small open carriages. I climbed up on the wooden seat and sat on the smiley lady's lap because I didn't want to miss a thing. She moved me back onto the seat crossly because she was wearing white trousers and the paths are made of red sand, so she was now covered in red paw prints. Oops. I decided to avoid eye contact and turn towards the window. I heard the smiley lady say to a family with young children who were also riding the train that the park hadn't changed since when she used to bring her children here when they were small. She said it was harder work bringing me though. I don't know what she meant by that. I was still scratching behind my ear a fair bit, but she hadn't noticed. Woo, we trundled past the rhinos and zebras and through the gardens and suddenly saw some jolly tall giraffes. If I closed my eyes really tight, I could imagine I was in Africa, not Oxfordshire. I thought to myself that the markings of a giraffe resembled sun-baked African soil in a drought. We waved at lots of children watching the train and they waved back. When we got back to the little station, we walked past the school children, now enjoying their picnic lunches. I really wanted to go and hoover up after them, but again the smiley lady said no. She can be such a spoilsport. No sign of the red panda. I was half expecting a big black and white cuddly teddy bear type panda in the bamboo, but this one is small, presumably red, and today not visible. My favourite part of the whole park is the walled garden. This contains the Humboldt penguins, and they have a really fun water slide into their cool blue pool, and they live in little houses concealed among the rocks. I really wanted to jump over the low wall and have a swim with them, but the smiley lady held me tight and only let me put my paws up on the wall to watch for a minute or two. I could have stayed there all day. It was that exciting. The penguins were playing chase and jumping in the water and swimming about a bit and then gliding out, shaking to dry, just like I do when I've been swimming in the river. I wondered if they could play fetch with a ball. Probably not. I didn't think their beaks would be wide enough for a tennis ball. In the next enclosure, and just a short step away from the penguins, were the meerkats. Boy, oh boy, did they look fun. They stand up on their hind legs. I can do that too. There were quite a few meerkat families with babies, and the adults were all standing up and staring at me. Quite rude, I thought. I started squeaking at them in frustration and trying to jump over the wall, but the smiley lady pulled me away, saying it was time to move on. Wow, in the next pen there were some prairie dogs. Well, that's what the label said, but they were tiny, not dog-like at all. They looked more like big gerbils. They looked as if they were also having lots of fun, and I really wanted to go and play with them too. They were rolling in the dust and playing tag. Yes, you've guessed it, I was steered out from the walled garden pretty sharpish and had a big drink of water from a thoughtfully provided doggy bowl. I sat under a bench whilst the smiley lady ate an old-fashioned ice cream. I looked up hopefully, doing my best meerkat impression, and eventually she gave me the very end of the cone, not quite the bit I was after. A final walk round the rhino paddock, and then it was time to go home. What a lovely day out we both had. I love Cotswold Wildlife Park, and I think it's open every day of the year except Christmas Day. I hope we visit again soon. I bet we both sleep well in our baskets tonight. So Rolo, like the rest of us, is very much looking forward to these places being open again so that we can go back and have more adventures. So thank you for joining us. Rolo's off already. We'll be back again tomorrow afternoon at 3:30 with another of his secret adventures. Thank you for listening. Bye.